Hi, welcome to this course on how to create amazing animated videos using VideoScribe. My name is Johnny Finch and I work for Sparkle, the creators of VideoScribe. And I've been using VideoScribe and teaching courses on how to get the most out of VideoScribe for over 6 years. In this course I've captured all the most useful hints and tips I've developed over this time, so you can quickly learn how easy it is to create engaging whiteboard animation videos using VideoScribe. This course is aimed at beginners who are completely new to VideoScribe, as well as those who have already mastered the basics and want to go a little bit deeper and learn some neat tricks. You don't need to be an artist, as VideoScribe comes with a huge library of images which will automatically draw themselves in VideoScribe. And you don't need to have any previous experience with video making software, as I'll be taking you through everything from the ground up. I'll be walking you through a step-by-step process which will guide you through the complete process of creating an animated video from scratch. In the first section of the course we're going to start by building a simple scribe. This will introduce you to all the basic components of building a scribe and allow you to become familiar with the canvas and the timeline. Then in the following sections of the course we'll take a deeper dive into each of the core stages of the process. Planning out your scribe project and setting the theme for your video, recording and adding audio, adding the visual content to your scribe, controlling the camera movement and creating scenes, using different animation techniques, adjusting the scribe timings, and at the end I'll bring this all together as we finalise and share our video. For each section of the course you'll be able to download the example scribe we're working on so you can see exactly how everything's been done. And if you have any questions during the course, you can go to the Q&A tab where you can see if anyone else has asked that question, or you can post a new question. Okay, so let's jump straight in and get started. Hi, welcome to this lesson where we'll be learning how to navigate around the main areas in VideoScribe. When you first log in, you'll land here on the project screen. Here you'll see any projects you've already created, and you can create folders like this to organise them. I'll be showing you how to do this soon. By default, your projects are saved locally onto your machine. So we can see here we're looking at my local scribes, but I'll also be showing you how you can save them online to our cloud servers, which you can access here. Next you can see we have a templates folder. Here we provide a wide range of ready-made template scribes that you can download and then customise. So you can look through these and find one that looks interesting and then open it up to see how it looks in preview. Then if you like it, you can use it as the basis for your project rather than starting from scratch. And you can customise it by changing the text and replacing the images for ones that match your topic. Okay, back to the project screen. Down here in the corner we have the option to import a project file that you or a colleague may have created on another machine. We'll come back to this shortly. And here we have the settings window. In here you can select the language you want to use, and there's a link here to take you to your account page so you can look at your profile and your subscription information. This next option lets you control how often a backup version is saved. This is very useful in case your machine crashes, so you don't lose hours of work. You can set it to 0 to turn it off, but it's a good idea to leave this at about 5 minutes. Next we can see the default timings for transitions, pauses, and this sets the maximum time an element will take to draw. 8 seconds is actually quite long, as we'll see, so I'm going to reduce this to 2 seconds. We can still adjust all of these later for individual elements in our project. These just control the initial default values for when the elements are added. This next setting controls the quality for the bitmaps you import. So that's PNGs and JPEG images. This won't affect the images in the library, as these are all scalable SVGs, as we'll see later. So you might need to change this, for example if you import an image that you want to zoom in on, but be aware that larger images do take up more memory. There's also an extended tooltip feature which I'll be showing you shortly, and if you want you can turn this off here. Okay, and here's a help icon which shows you the version you're using and also gives you a link directly to our help site. So before we get into creating a new project, I just want to quickly show you the help site. So on here you can go to our instant answers section, and we've got loads of articles and how-to videos to help you, covering all these topics. So for example, you could go in here and learn how to change a hand. You can also use the search, and as well as the instant answers, we also have our community area where you can find lots of great information and post new questions. Okay, back to VideoScribe. The next thing we're going to do is create a new blank scribe by clicking here. Okay, this is the main edit screen. In the middle here is the canvas, and this is where we'll be adding our content. At the top is the toolbar with options to save, copy paste, and over here we can control aspects of the scribe like audio and hands, etc. And also publishing. And here's that handy help icon again if you need to get back to the help site. Also notice that when you hover over an item, as well as seeing the basic tooltip, there's also this option to see more, which gives us a bit more detail. And if we'd like even more help on this topic, we can click on this read more link. So for example, if we wanted to find out more about adding backgrounds, we could click here, and this takes us directly to the help article about this topic. Okay, so next down here is the timeline, which is pretty empty right now. And over here are the icons that let us add our visual content. Okay, that's it for now. We've learnt how to navigate around the main areas of VideoScribe. In the next lesson, we'll start to build a new simple scribe. Hi, in this next lesson we're going to learn how to add some images and text to our canvas and arrange them to make a simple video. The theme for my video is going to be planning a trip to Europe. At the end of the last lesson we created a new blank scribe, and here we are on the edit screen with a completely empty canvas. So the first thing I need to do is to add my first element. I'm going to do this using these icons down here. This first one lets me add a new image. VideoScribe comes with a huge library of thousands of images, all created to draw beautifully in VideoScribe. We'll look at the different types of images later on, so for now I'm going to use the search to find my first image, and I'm looking for a map of Europe. So this gives me a few options here, and I'm just going to choose this one. So you'll notice this gets placed in the middle of the canvas area, and I can pick this up and drag it and move it around and position it where I need to, and also resize it. Next I'm going to add some text, so that's this button here. And then we just type our text in here. So I'm going to add this title, Planning a Trip to Europe. So that's all we need to do for now. So again, we can position this. In this case, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger here. You can also use this rotate icon here to rotate your elements. Next, I'm going to start adding some images to represent the different places I plan to visit on my trip. First stop, Paris. So I'll go back to the Add Image screen and type in Landmark Paris. Again, we've got some options here, and I'm going to choose the good old Eiffel Tower. And I'm also going to choose the whiteboard style version of the image rather than the full colour one. And again, I can resize this and position it where I want it. Now at this point, I'm going to need to start thinking about my layout. This is because the way I position my elements on the canvas here will impact the way my video looks. So let's stop here and use the preview to check out what this is going to look like now. If I select this option here, it will play my video from the start. Notice how VideoScribe will automatically zoom in on each element so it's drawn in the middle of the camera view. You can then see the camera pan down to the next element so that it's drawn in the middle, and so on. And then at the very end it will zoom out so you can see all the elements in the final frame. This is how VideoScribe works by default, and it creates a really nice effect. But once you've got the hang of the basics, I'll be showing you how you can control the camera movement, which will allow you to make much more sophisticated videos. Okay, let's try something. Let's try moving the Eiffel Tower image to the right here, and then previewing again. Now you'll see that after writing the text here, the camera will automatically pan to the right before drawing the Eiffel Tower. So you can begin to see that the way you lay out your elements on the canvas is going to dictate the direction in which the camera needs to go in order to follow what's going on. Okay, that's it for this lesson. We've looked at how you can add images and text to the canvas and start to arrange them into a layout for your video. In the next lesson, we'll learn how to move the canvas around so we can continue to build our first simple scribe. Hi, In this lesson, we can learn how we can move around the canvas while we're editing so we can continue to build our simple video. In the last lesson, we created the first part of our project, and we can see we've already used up almost all the available space we have here. So where are we going to put our next image? Actually, that's not a problem, because the canvas is in fact infinite, and we're just seeing a tiny part of it here. To move around, all you need to do is click anywhere on the canvas and drag it to reveal a new area. So I can simply move across to the right here a bit, and then add my next image here. The next stop on my trip is going to be Italy, so let's add another image. And this time I'm going to search for landmark Italy. And I'll use this image of the Colosseum in Rome, and I'll position it here next to the Eiffel Tower image. So let's preview this again, but this time, instead of previewing the whole project from the beginning, I'm going to start from a specific point in the timeline. So I can select the Eiffel Tower element in the timeline here, and then, instead of using the Play from Start option, I can click on this next icon to preview from my current position. So this shows us just this last part of the video. So this is how we can extend our scribe. We can move the canvas to a new area when we need to, and then we can add our next element. And you can see that I'm continuing to use this same layout by moving to the right each time. My next stop is Greece, so let's find another image. This time I'm going to search for the Parthenon. And I'll place this image again to the right. Okay, so we've also got these icons over here which will help us to move around the canvas. So you can use these arrow keys to move up and down. We've also got these zoom icons here. So these allow you to zoom out and zoom in. Also, as well as using the mouse to drag the canvas around, you can also use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. So with a combination of dragging and then zooming with the mouse wheel, it's very easy to move around and then move between different parts of the scribe that you might be working on. Because once your scribe gets a bit bigger, you're going to need to sort of be able to move backwards and forwards quite easily. So zooming out is quite useful. The other button we've got at the end here is this Fit to Screen button. So again, this is useful. This just zooms all the way out. So if you were working in a particular area, you could then use this to zoom out, see where everything else is, and then go over and work in a different area. Okay, so I've actually decided I'm going to rearrange my scribe into a new layout. So instead of having the landmarks in a row like this, I've decided it might be a good idea to have them positioned around the map here. So you can watch while I use the zooming and moving around the canvas ideas to actually rearrange the scribe here. So they're going to need to be a little bit smaller, and then I'm going to position them around the map. Just make a bit of room by moving this down. So I've just done that approximately. So now I can zoom in on each one and just position it and make it look roughly how I want it. And remember, because we're still using the default camera settings, we know the camera will automatically adjust to this new arrangement. Okay, that's done. So now let's preview that last part again to see how it looks. So you can see it's now moving around the map in the middle, drawing each of the landmark images. Cool, I prefer this layout. I think it looks really good when it zooms out at the end. Okay, let's get back to this set of controls here. Notice that you can actually see the canvas zoom level here. It's a good idea to keep an eye on this while you're editing. When we started, we were working at 100% zoom, which is here. But remember that when we preview, VideoScribe automatically zooms in so each element is nice and big in the middle of the screen. So the zoom level will always be changing. So each time you add a new element, try to make sure it's on the same scale as everything else, like I've been doing with these landmark images. And like I said, keep an eye on the zoom level. You may need to zoom out in your project, maybe to show a group of elements, but try not to go lower than about 10%. You shouldn't need to. Zooming in can be very effective too. So for example, you might want to zoom in on a building to add a person at a smaller scale. Let me show you how you can do that. Let's zoom in here. And then search for a person. You can see we've got lots of images of people in the library, over 1,000 here. And you can see they come in a few different styles. For this scribe, I think these stick figures would work well. So let's add this to the search and find one we like. Here we go, we can add this one and position it like this. That looks great, but notice that the zoom level is now quite high. This is not a problem, but you'll want to avoid zooming in and in repeatedly, because once you get to 2500%, that's the maximum. Personally, I always try to stay under 1000%. While we're here, notice how the background image has not become pixelated. The lines are still really smooth. This is because the images in the library are SVGs, scalable vector graphics, which means they don't lose any quality as you zoom in. Let's have a quick look at what this will look like in our video. Let's preview from the Parthenon image. I like that, that's pretty cool. Okay, so we've now looked at how we can move around the canvas while we're editing. In the next lesson, we'll be learning how to use the timeline. Hi, welcome to this lesson where we'll be learning how to use the timeline. So you can see we've now got a few elements on our timeline here, and of course the order they appear on the timeline dictates the order they will be drawn onto the canvas. To reorder elements in the timeline, you can simply pick them up and drag them to a new position. You can also hold down the Control or Command key and then use the left and right arrows. In our scribe, at the moment it will draw the map first and then the title text. So if I decided I wanted the title to be drawn first, all I need to do is select the text element and drag it in front of the map element. When you reorder elements in the timeline, you need to bear in mind that this won't affect their position on the canvas. So in some cases you might also need to rearrange them here as well. So for example, now that this text is being drawn first, I think it would look better if it was above the image of the map. So now I can simply move the title to where I want it on the canvas. Let's just preview that to make sure it looks okay. Okay, great, I like that. The next really useful thing you can do on the timeline is to show the camera position of each element. To do this, you either click on the little camera icon here, or the shortcut is to simply double click on the timeline tile itself. This will reposition the canvas to automatically show the exact camera position for that element. So this is the view this element will be drawn in at this point in the timeline. It will then pan across to the next camera position for the next element, and so on. You can see there are a few more icons on the timeline here. So we can lock or hide the element. I'll be covering scenarios where these will be useful later on. You can delete the element, which removes it from the canvas and the timeline. And we can also go into the element's properties. Again, we'll be covering these later on. Then we have the quick menu. These are the most common settings for an element, which you're able to control directly from the timeline, without having to open the properties screen. The first three control the timings for the element. First is the animate time. This is how long the element takes to draw, so if you increase this, the element will be drawn more slowly. And if you decrease it, the element will be drawn more quickly. The next one is the pause. This is how long it will pause after drawing this element before moving to the next one. The default is half a second, but you may need to increase this if you have a lot to say in your voiceover about this point. Alternatively, you could of course increase the animate time so it draws slower. Next is the transition time. This is how long the camera will take to pan across to the next element before starting to draw it. The default is 1 second. But for example, we could make it so it zooms in on our stick figure more slowly. To do this, we would increase the transition time on the Parthenon element. So this is the element just before the transition. Again, we might want to do this to fit with the timing of our voiceover better. We can change the default for each of these in the settings screen we saw earlier. Remember, I changed the max draw time. The transition time on the very last element is used to control how quickly it zooms out at the end to reveal the complete picture. So again, we could increase this to slow it down. If you don't want to zoom at the end, and you just want to finish on the last element in your timeline, then you just need to go into the preview and uncheck this zoom at end option. Now it just ends on our stick figure. The last tab on the quick menu gives you some more controls for setting the camera, so we'll be covering these later. Once you've opened the quick menu, it will remember it's open, and it will remember which tab you're on. This could be useful because you often find yourself working on a particular aspect of a scribe, like tweaking the timings or adjusting camera positions. So it means you'll already be on the right tab. If you're not currently using any of these settings, then you can close the quick menu, and again it will remember this. Okay, now when your scribe starts getting a bit bigger, you'll need to start scrolling the timeline to get to different parts of it. You can use these arrow keys on either side of the timeline to do this, or you can use the mouse wheel. If your mouse is over the canvas, the mouse wheel will zoom the canvas, as we know. But if you point at the timeline, then the mouse wheel will scroll left and right through the timeline, which is really useful. It's also worth remembering that when you select an element on the canvas, it will automatically jump to that position in the timeline. So this can be really useful if you're working on a larger scribe. So for example, to jump to the beginning of my scribe, I can click on the Fit to Screen icon here, and then simply select my first element on the canvas, and the timeline would then automatically scroll to this position. So the last thing I want to show you on the timeline are these timer markings under each of the elements. These indicate the actual time that each of these elements will start and end. So you can see we start here at 0 seconds, and then the first element finishes at 4 seconds in. This is a combination of all the timings for this element, so the time it takes to draw, the pause, and the transition across to the next camera position. This next element will then start to be drawn at 4 seconds. And we can see the total time for our video on the last element here. Okay, so that's it for this lesson. We've learnt how to work with the timeline and the quick menu. In the next lesson, we'll be looking at how to save and organise your projects. Hi, this is the last lesson in the Building a Simple Scribe section of the course, and we're going to be learning how to save and organise our projects. So far we've created this simple scribe project. We started with all the landmark images in a line out to the right, which is a very simple way to create a scribe. Then we reorganised it so the landmark images appeared around the edge of the central image of the map. This is another classic scribe layout, which is very easy to achieve. And you can easily see how I could extend this by adding more landmark images for the other places that I plan to visit on my trip. There, all done. So let's have a last look at that in preview to see what it looks like. Okay, so we've finished building our simple scribe. Normally we'd also want to add music and a voiceover, but I'll be showing you those later on. And also I'll be showing you how you can publish your scribe and share it. For now what we're going to do is look at the save options. So the save button's over here. So first of all what we want to do is click on this and give our project a name. We can also create a folder to put this scribe in. So we do that here. And now we can save it. So if I now exit this scribe, here we are back on the project screen, and you can see our new scribe here, and also it's in the folder. To open the scribe, we simply click on the tile. We can now see the project loading up. That's our basic save option, so that saved a copy of this scribe locally on my local machine. If we go back into the save screen here, you'll notice we've got two other options. One is to save a copy of your scribe file onto your computer, which is useful if you want to take a backup or if you want to send it to a colleague. And the other one is to save a copy to your online scribes. So let's choose this one. So this scribe has now been saved to my online folder. So if I exit again, we come back to the project screen. So one of the useful things about saving your scribes online is they're going to be available across all your other machines as long as you log in with the same user. So let's imagine I'm on a different machine and I don't have this scribe locally. Okay, so now I come to my other machine and I go to my online scribes, and I can now download this scribe onto my new machine. So again, first thing it does is it loads everything, and it's a good idea if you've just downloaded a scribe to save it locally first. So here we go, I'll save this one again, and just to confirm, there it is. The other thing I wanted to do was show you how you could export a scribe file. So you saw the option from the save screen when we had the project open. I'm just going to show you here how you get to those same options without opening the scribe. So we can upload the scribe to our online folders from here as well. We can delete it, or we can export the scribe file, which is what we want to do. So here we can choose any folder on our machine, and it's going to save it with a .scribe extension. So again, let's imagine we're on another machine, and this time we're going to use the import scribe option. So that's right down here. So on another machine we could find that same file, open it up, and again it's going to bring everything into this machine. And as before, I recommend the first thing you do is save a local copy. So that's everything for this lesson. We've looked at the various ways we can save and organise our project files. And that's also everything for this first section on how to build a simple scribe. And the scribe file we've just exported is available as a download, so you can look at everything we've done. Just click on the resources button in the course content list on the right. You'll see that this is a .zip file, but you can import this in exactly the same way as a .scribe file. Hi, welcome to this lesson where we'll be learning how to plan out a new project. There are 5 basic steps you should follow when planning out a new project. First of all, you need to decide what message or story you want to tell. Then you need to write out the script. Next, you should create a storyboard. We recommend that you record your voiceover next. And finally, it's time to go into VideoScribe to set up your project theme. These are the 5 steps we recommend you follow to help you plan a great scribe. So first off, make sure you have a clear message. Maybe start by giving your project a title and write down what the objective of the video is. What are the key points you want to convey? Think about who the audience will be. Is it aimed at students, employees, or prospective clients? This will influence what sort of tone you should use. Should it be informal or professional, relaxed or more serious? What styles should you use? This covers everything from the colours and fonts you choose to use, to the types of images, backgrounds and animations that would suit your video best. And what actions do you want your audience to take at the end? Do you want them to write an assessment, visit your website, or just put what they have learnt into practice? Step 2 is to write your script. Based on the information from the first step, you can now start to write your script. Start by dividing what you want to say into sections. This can be a list of bullet points outlining each of the main points you want to cover. Remember that each of these sections will become a scene or a particular set of images in your video. Then make sure these points are in a logical order so they convey your message or story clearly. Next, for each of the sections, write out the actual script for the voiceover. Next, it's a really good idea to sketch out a storyboard for your video. This will help you to plan out how your video will look visually. Here's a section of the storyboard I'll be using for the next demo scribe project in this course. You can select suitable images to help illustrate each of your points. Try searching the Video Scribe library for ideas. The storyboard should also cover the types of animations to be used and indicate any camera movements such as panning or zooming. We've created a storyboard template which is available for you to download and use as part of this section of the course. Also, while you're working on your storyboard, it's a good time to think about what sort of layout you're going to use for your scribe. So this is how you plan to arrange your elements on the canvas and how the camera will follow the action as the story evolves. The thing to remember here is that there are no rules. That's one of the great things about VideoScribe. You have a giant whiteboard and you can draw your elements wherever you want and have the camera move around the canvas however you want. But to get you started, here are a few of the most common and useful layouts you can use. The first is linear. Here you simply arrange each of your elements in a line and the camera will follow them to illustrate your voiceover. Next is the collage. This is similar to the linear layout, but here your elements are arranged into an interesting pattern. Again, just like you might draw on a regular whiteboard. Here the camera will move around the canvas to follow your pattern. A variation on this is the mind map, where you have a central principal element with elements representing each of the related points positioned around the edge. And finally you have scenes. This is really popular as it's just like telling a story with illustrations on separate pages. Here you group all the elements relating to a section of your script into one canvas view. The key here is that the camera stays focused on this scene until all the elements have been drawn. Then it pans to the next scene and stays there while that scene unfolds, and so on. Okay, so the next step is to record your voiceover. In most cases, we recommend you record a draft version before you even start building your scribe. This will give you a good idea of how long your video will be, and also how long each of the sections or scenes will take. Don't worry about getting it perfect at this stage, as you may well end up redrafting your script once you start building the scribe, but it will provide a really useful timing guide as you build your scribe. I'll be showing you how you can record your voiceover in the next section. So now it's time to start building a scribe in VideoScribe. And the first thing you'll want to do is set up the theme for your project. You can do this by choosing a background, it doesn't always need to be a whiteboard, and selecting a default hand. I'll be showing you how you can do these in the next lesson. And later in the course, we'll be looking at how you can select fonts and colours to match your theme. So that's it for this lesson. Just to recap, we looked at these 5 steps to plan a great scribe. Decide your message, write your script, draw your storyboard, record your voiceover, and then set up your theme. Hi, in this lesson we're going to learn how to set up a theme for a new scribe project. So let's start by creating a new scribe. By default, VideoScribe is set up to create whiteboard animation videos. So you can see the canvas is white, and if we add an image here quickly and hit preview, you'll see that by default all the elements you add to the canvas will be drawn with this default hand. This is great if this is the style of video you're looking for, but we can easily make a few changes to set up different themes. The first option we have is the canvas background here. So first of all, we can select the colour of the background here. We can select one of these colours from the available palette, or we can type in a hex code here. So for example, you could select one of your brand colours, or use a colour that fits the topic or mood of your video. Next we have these background textures here. This one, for example, makes a good chalkboard if you use it with a dark grey. And there are also a few different paper textures, like this parchment here. Let's try this corkboard one here. You can also select a hard or soft vignette, which gives this sort of effect where you can see it getting darker towards the outside. So you can see this already gives your video a different feel. The next video we're going to be creating for this course is about healthy living, so I'm going to choose this light blue colour with no vignette and no texture. The next option you have is the type of hand, which we can change here. This first one is the default hand, which we've already seen, but we can select from a range of options here. Notice this one, no hand. This creates a really cool effect where the images appear to draw themselves. So you might want to use this as your main hand for your scribe, or you could use it for specific effects within your scribe, as we'll see later. Another option is to use a freestanding pen without a hand. And under this you can see a list of names. For each person you will find a set of hands using different types of pens, including chalk here. There are also some hands without pens, which are useful for things like move-ins, which we'll see later on. And there's even a hand holding an eraser, which can be used when you want to erase an image or text as part of your video. Again, we'll be using this later. You can see we have male and female hands, as well as a range of skin tones. I'm going to use this set here for my video, so for now we need to select the main hand we want to use for most of the scribe. Maybe this one. We'll then be able to change the hand for specific elements later on if we need to. In most cases it makes sense to stick with the hands from the same set for a particular video for consistency. So let's select this one and preview to see what it looks like. Now this hand will be used for all the new elements I add, unless I choose to overwrite it. Okay, I'm just going to delete this image here now. As well as changing the background colour and texture, you can also use images to create a background. One easy way to do this is to go to the scenery folder and select a background image for each of your scenes. For example, we might want to start with a beach scene. We can enlarge this to fill the background. I'm going to zoom out a bit so I can make sure it fills the whole screen at 100% zoom. It's a good idea once you've positioned your background image to go to the timeline and use this icon to lock the element. This means we won't be able to select it by mistake or move it accidentally. And then we can place our other elements on top of this to build our scene. You can use any image as a background. Try searching for backgrounds to see what's available. Or you could import your own image. You can even use a photo. Also remember that it doesn't necessarily need to be a single image. You could build up your background using a number of images. So for example, you can see that in this template we created, we used a background colour and texture here, and we've added these images around the edge and then this blank piece of paper in the middle. Remember, if you want the background to already be there from the start of your video, you'll need to select each of the background elements and then change all three timing settings to 0. You can see here that we've done this for the first few elements in this template. The background will then all appear already in position from the first frame of your video, rather than being drawn first. The other important components that go to make up your theme are the fonts, images and colours you select for your video. We'll be looking at these later on in the course, but you can see here that we've chosen specific images, fonts and colours to create a fun theme for young school children. And we also used a child's hand holding a crayon. So going back to our new project, I'm going to select this background image and I'm going to make it nice and big. So I'm going to zoom out to about 30% and then fill most of the screen, so that when I zoom back into 100%, I'll have lots of space to create my scribe on top of it. Next, I'm going to set all the timings to 0 for this element on the timeline. And I'm going to lock this image in place. So now I can move around the canvas without selecting or moving the background image. The last thing I need to do here is save this new project. And I'm going to call it Healthy Living. So that's it for this lesson. We've looked at how you can set up your theme using hands and backgrounds, and we've also now completed this section of the course on planning and setting up your project. Don't forget you can download the storyboard template to use when planning your projects, and you can also download the scribe file for this example project we've created so far. Hi, welcome to this lesson where we'll be learning how to find suitable images for our scribe. First of all, we'll be looking at images in the library and the different styles that are available, including our premium images which have been created specifically for VideoScribe by independent artists. Then in the next lesson, we'll be looking at how you can import your own images. Okay, so far we've set the background colour and added this background image. We've also set the default hand and added a music track and a voiceover. Now it's time to find some suitable images to use in our project. So let's start by opening up the library. One way to find the images you need is to have a look through these image folders. Arrows are always useful in scribe videos as they help guide your audience through your story. And we have loads of different types of arrows in here, and you can easily change the colours of these too, as we'll see later. And you can see a whole list of other categories down here. Images of people are also very popular for telling stories, and we have a wide range of characters in this folder. But you'll also find people in a lot of the other folders, for example under Education or Business. And if we scroll along here, we'll also find all sorts of useful images in this category, covering stationery, furniture, and loads of other related objects. But sometimes you need to express an idea or a concept, like happy or confused. So we have some very useful images in the Concepts and Metaphors folder here. These cover things like time, finance, planning, building, and so on. We've also got more people under Home and Family here. And another really useful folder is Shapes. Here you can find lots of different shapes in several styles, including 3D shapes. Again, you can change the colour of all of these, and there are lots of situations where these can be really handy, which we'll get into later. Okay, looking at my storyboard, I can see that the first image I need is a person running. So let's take a look in the Sports folder. Here we can see things like athletics, swimming, cycling, soccer, and so on. And again we have people as well as items. So I'm going to jump back to the runners we saw on the first page by typing in a 1 here. Notice that each image is available in two separate styles, full colour and the highlight whiteboard style which we used in the first project. I'm going to use this runner here, and I'm going to be using the full colour versions of the images for this project. So there's my first image, which I'm going to resize, and I'm going to make sure I'm starting at 100% zoom before I place it over here, like in my storyboard. Normally I'd start to think about setting the camera for each element as I add them, but as we'll be covering that in the next section of the course, I'll leave this until then. Next I'd like to add some type of outdoor scene. So I can either look in the scenery folder like we did before, or I can use the search. Searching is really powerful as it will find images from across the complete library. So if I'd used the search to find the running figure I used, I could have started by typing in person. On its own, this brings up way too many images to look through. So I could refine this if I add running. And in this case, I'm looking for a single person, so I can select number of people, 1. And there we go, there's the one I chose. Okay, so next I want to find my outdoor scene. So this time I'm going to type scene. And you can see we have a range of images here. If I click the option here, we'll be able to see the premium images that are available. So these are images added by independent artists. We vet all these images before they're allowed to appear in VideoScribe to make sure they look good and draw well. But you can see that these give you other options in terms of the style of image you use for your project. This red banner indicates that you will need to pay for the image. A green banner means that they are being offered for free. You can see the information about the image if you select one, including the artist and the price, and you can preview the image before you buy it. Okay, in my case I'm going to stick with the standard library images, and I'm looking for a colour image. Here we go, I think I like the look of this one. So at this stage I want to quickly talk about layers. As you add new elements to your project, as well as being in a particular order here in the timeline, they are also layered in the same order on the canvas. This makes sense. As you add more images, you always want them to be drawn on top of anything that's already on the canvas. If I wanted to have this scene drawn first and then draw the runner on top of it, I would need to change the order of the timeline. Now you can see that the runner is on top. And this does look great, but in my case I want the runner to appear first. So I'm going to swap these back here. And I want to have the bridge positioned over here like this. So now it looks like he's maybe about to run across the bridge there. Okay, so that's quite a nice healthy looking scene to start our Healthy Living Scribe with. And that's it for this lesson. We've learned how to use the library to find images, including premium images. In the next lesson, I'll be showing you how you can import your own images. Hi, welcome to this lesson where we'll be learning how to import your own images. So these could be royalty-free images you found, they could be photographs, or even illustrations you've created yourself. Okay, so far in our project we've added a few images from the library, but you can also import your own images. To do this, you simply need to go to the Add Image screen again, and just like we saw on the audio screens, down here we have icons that will allow us to import an image from a local drive on our machine or from a URL. And as it says here, we can import SVGs, GIFs, which we'll be talking about a little bit later, PNGs or JPEGs. And the last option allows you to look directly at a zip file containing a number of images. And you can see I've already got a few images in this folder here. So you could use this, for example, to import a copy of your logo. You can also create your own images using tools like Illustrator or Inkscape. That's beyond the scope of this course, so we'll be covering how to do that on a separate course. In my case, I wanted to find some images to represent healthy body and healthy mind. There are a number of stock image sites you can use, like Shutterstock or Pixabay, that provide royalty-free images. And these can be used either for free or for a charge, depending on the site and the license agreement. So this is another way of finding different types and styles of images for your project. Another site you can use is the Noun Project. They have millions of icon-style images, which can be really useful. So I've already searched on this site for images I could use, and I've downloaded these two here. So let's select this first one to import it into our scribe. And you can see we get these options here, which determine how the image will be animated. We'll be covering these other animation methods, move in and fade in, later on. So I'm going to leave this on draw, but here we can choose the way this image will be drawn. Remember that all the images in the library are SVGs which have been created specifically for VideoScribe. So they already contain information about how the pen will move in order to draw the image onto the canvas. But when we import a JPEG or PNG image, the information on how this will be drawn will need to be added. And we have these two options on how this will be done. By default, it will use a diagonal reveal effect to draw the image, which we can see here. The great thing about this option is that it will work for any image, like a photo for example. The second option is to sketch it. Here it's going to try to identify all the outlines in the image and then draw these. So this works quite well for an image like this with clear outlines. So we'll choose this option and import it. So this is now an image just like the others, and we can place it wherever we want. So let's import the second image now. And we'll choose the sketch option again. So these are our images to represent healthy body and healthy mind. You can also import your own photos. So for example, maybe we have an outdoor photo we'd like to use instead of this image here. So let's go in here again, and this time I'm going to import this photo here. Again, we can choose the draw style, and this time I'm going to use the reveal option so that it's going to draw like this. So let's bring this image in and place it over the top of my current image to see what it looks like. That also looks good. But for my project, I'm going to stick with my original image, so let's just delete this one again. Okay, so that's most of this first scene done, and that's it for this lesson. We've learned how you can import different types of images. In the next lesson, I'll be showing you how you can use text in your scribe. Hi, welcome to this lesson where we'll be learning how to use text in our scribe. As a rule, it's a good idea not to use too much text and to rely on the voiceover to convey the content of your story or your message. You can then use the canvas to add visual elements to illustrate and support your narration. Having said that, text can be really effective for things like headings, numbering different parts of your scribe, and also to emphasize particularly important pieces of information. Remember that your fonts are part of your theme, so you want to select fonts and colours that match your theme. So for example, if you've gone for a chalkboard theme in terms of your background, then you might want to use a font like this. Or you might want to go for an ink pen and paper theme like this. Or even a parchment style like this. So you can see that by combining the background colour and texture with particular fonts and also using the appropriate hand, you can produce a wide range of different themes that you can use in your videos. Okay, so far we've added these images to build up our first scene. The only thing that's missing here is the title text. So the idea here is to have this text inside a speech bubble. So let's add this image first. Before we do though, we need to think about when this should appear in the timeline, so we can add it at the right position. In this case, we want the speech bubble to appear just after the bridge image has been drawn. So we need to select this first. If we don't, then the new element will automatically be added to the end of the timeline. So now it'll be placed just after this selected element. Speech bubbles are images, and so they're included in the image library, and they're in this callouts folder. I'm going to select this one. Okay, so next I'm going to need to reorganize this a little in order to fit this in. There, that looks about right. So next I need to add the text, and I want it to appear on top of the speech bubble. So again, I just need to select this position in the timeline. So now we can use this next icon here to add new text. So the first thing I'm going to do is type in my text here. Up here you can see we have a number of fonts already installed, and by default it's set up to use this one. So let's change it for this one here. Next we see the styles that are available for this font. So we can select bold. Here we have the option to add more fonts. So on the left we have a list of available fonts, and you can add them by clicking on the plus icon. Next we can select the alignment here and the colour here. This screen is just like the one we saw for the background colour. So I want this text to be centred, and I'm going to add a return in here so that it wraps. Okay, so we can add this now. And we can position it here on top of the speech bubble. Okay, great. So that's it for this first scene. We still need to set the camera and the timings, but we'll be coming back to those soon. For the next scene, I'm going to move up here to this area of canvas. So the idea is that my first scene will be in the middle, and I'll arrange each of the different parts of the scribe around the edge here. Okay, let's just get back to 100% zoom again. Often when you move to a new scene, you want to make sure you have a completely blank area of the canvas. But in this case, I deliberately want to keep this image from our first scene in the view here. Okay, so there are 4 key aspects of healthy living the scribe is going to cover. And for each one, I'm going to use a number to introduce that section of the scribe. So let's add some text again and add our first number. And then for this text, I want a nice bold font. So let's have a look at some of the options in more fonts. We've got quite a few options to choose from here, but I like the look of this one. So let's download it. And now you can see that this font is available to use here. So now I want to make this nice and big and position it in the top corner here. Great. A useful little tip which I'll mention here is how you can add special characters to your text. So let's add another text element here. So the first one is adding bullet points. To do this, you can hold down the Alt key and then press 7 on the number pad and then release. And there you get a little bullet point. You can also use Alt 8 to get this one, and Alt 9 and Alt 10. It's important that you use the number pad and not the numbers along the top of the keyboard for this, and that you hold down the Alt key, type the number and then release. There's actually a whole load of these Alt codes you can use. For example, Alt 1 gives you a smiley face, Alt 13 and 14 give you musical notes, and if you want a superscript 2, so you can write something like 4 squared, it's Alt 253 and then release. There's lots more of these, and you can get a list if you simply Google Alt codes. And the great thing is that as long as the font you're using supports the characters, then VideoScribe will draw them for you. Okay, that's all for this lesson. We've learned how to add text and change the font settings. In the next lesson, we'll be looking at the element property settings. Hi, welcome to this lesson where we'll be learning how to adjust the settings of our text and images using the element properties. So I'm just going to move back to our first scene here. There are a couple of ways we can get into the properties screen for an element. First, we can select the element in the timeline and then click on this little icon here. That's useful if you're working down on the timeline, but a quick shortcut is to simply double click on the element on the canvas. So these are the image properties. They'll be slightly different for text and other types of elements. The first thing we can do is use this tab to replace the image. Here we can select a different image from the library, or we can import an image just like before. This is useful as it will maintain all the settings of the current image, so the size, position, etc. So it's easy to try out different options, like this. The next tab allows you to add various filters to the element. So you can add a blur, which might be useful for an object you have in the background. You can add a glow around the edge of your element and change the colour here. and you have options to adjust the brightness, saturation and contrast here. We can also add a drop shadow, an inner shadow or a bevel effect as well. A lot of the most useful options are here on the Drawing Options tab. So at the top here we can see the animation methods, which we'll be covering a bit later on in the course. And next we have some options to control the image colours and style. I'll be looking at these in more detail in the next lesson. So next we have settings which allow you to change the opacity of the element and also set the rotation. And this icon allows you to flip the image. So we could have our character running the other way. And there are a few other orientations here before we get back to the original. Down here we can see the element timings. These are the same ones we looked at earlier using the timeline quick menu. And again, I'll be covering these more in a minute. The last tab here is the element hand. We've already looked at how we can set the default hand for the scribe. This option lets us select a hand for a specific element. So you may want a hand with a different type of pen for a particular element. We'll need to use these later on when we look at different types of animation. So that's covered element properties for an image. Next I want to look at our text element. Notice that this first tab now allows us to edit the text. So now I'd like to change the colour of this text to match our theme. And in this case I'm going to use a hex code to get this colour. We can also set filters for text elements. So here I'm going to show you how you can add a drop shadow to your text. You can select the colour for the shadow here, and the angle and the offset. So I can set this to 50 and this one to 30. And you can see this looks quite good now. I'm also going to change the hand for this text. And I'm going to select the no hand option here. So this means that the images will be drawn using a hand, and then this text will appear to draw itself, which is quite a cool effect. Okay, so we've covered all the general element property settings. In the next lesson I'm going to focus on how you can customize images. Welcome to this lesson where we'll be learning how to customize your images by changing the image style and colours. So let's get back to our first scene and open the properties for our character here. And we'll be looking at these image settings here. So in this full colour mode you'll be able to change some of the colours in the image. The number of options you see here will depend on the image. Some images don't include this feature. So for example, if I was using the highlight version of the same image, I'd be able to change the highlight colour here. So if you're creating a scribe using this style of image, you can set the theme and have all your images appearing with a matching colour. For the full colour versions of the images, you have a few more options. For images of people, you can change the skin tone here, and the hair colour here. You can also change the main colours in the image. So here we can change the t-shirt colour and the colour of the shorts. So you can see you can really customize these images to fit your scribe. Oh, and by the way, if you replace your image now, it will remember your new colours. And you can change these back to the defaults like this. I'm going to use these original colours as they fit my theme better. So these are the colour change options available in full colour mode. Next we can select outline mode. Here all the fill colours are removed, so you just have the outlines. And you can change the colour of these here. So this can be very useful if you're going for a classic whiteboard look with outlined images on a white background. Next there's a grayscale option, where all the colours here are converted to shades of grey. And the last option turns your image into a silhouette. This can be very useful if you want solid shapes without the outline. So for example, we could use this with the speech bubble image. One option would be to change this to outline mode so we can change the line colour, which does look pretty good. But we can also use the silhouette mode to get a solid shape, and then change this colour to match our theme. So I think that looks pretty good. And we can use the same idea to customise these images too. For these images you'll need to use the silhouette mode, and then you can add your theme colour here. And I'm going to use this icon here to quickly skip to the next element. Okay, I think that looks good now. So that's it for this lesson. We've learnt how we can customise the colours and stars of our images to match the theme of our video. In the next lesson we'll be looking at how you can add charts and GIFs to your scribe. Hi, welcome to this lesson where we'll be learning how to add charts and GIFs to our scribe. In the last lesson we were customising the images in our first scene here. For this lesson we're going to be working on our second scene up here. So let's look at charts. You can add these using this third icon down here. So this section of the scribe is going to be talking about a healthy diet. So I'm going to add a pie chart to show the proportions of the different food groups we need. So we can add the labels in here, separated by commas. Remember not to add spaces after the commas here. Next we can add the data values for each of these. So, and again no spaces. Then you can select the chart type. I'm going to leave this as a bar for now. And we can add colour here. We can select the font here, and we can include the labels either inside the chart or outside, and if you want to show the values. And we can also change the border thickness, and it will generate the chart for you based on these details. To edit the properties, you can double click on the element like before. Once it's been created, a chart is basically an image, so most of these settings are the same as for images. But this first tab now allows you to edit the chart details. So let's change this for a pie chart with colour, and we can select the same font we used in the first scene, and this time use inside labels, and we can also increase the line thickness. So there we go, we've got a nice colourful pie chart here now. Next let's look at GIFs. These are included in the image library. So first we've got this animated alphabet folder, and then down here we've got a folder called GIFs. So these are all images that include some sort of animation of their own. So here we've got things like blinking eyes and gears that turn. So let's have a look at this one. And we can double click on this to go into properties. So we can see that GIFs have some different settings here. First let's preview this GIF to see what it does. So we can see the piston completes one turn here. The animate time for this GIF shows us how long it takes at normal speed to complete this animation. So 1.2 seconds here. That's the length of this GIF. If we increase this, it will complete the same animation in say 2.5 seconds. And you can see this has made it slower now. So just like other elements, we can set the animate time to speed up or slow down the animation. And by default, it will run through the animation once and then stop. So for the rest of the scribe, while in shot, this image will be static. But if we click this checkbox here, it will play continuously. So it will still take 2.5 seconds to run through the animation once, but then it will keep on animating for the rest of the video, while other things are happening. At the moment we've got this set to this option here, fit to time. This means it will fit one cycle of the animation into the animate time, like I said. And if we increase the time, it will slow the animation down to fit. The other option is to loop. Now this is different to this play continuously setting. What this means is that instead of slowing down or speeding up to fit the animate time, it will keep to its original timing, and if necessary it will loop. So let's remove this for now. Remember this was 1.2 seconds originally, so if I preview again now, it's gone back to its original speed, but now it has time to complete just over 2 turns before it stops. Okay, so let's delete this now. And for our scribe, we're going to talk about drinking water next. So we want to use the GIF of the water cooler. So this one has an animation of some bubbles, which is nice. The animate time for this one is 4 seconds, which is quite long, so I'm going to reduce this to 2 seconds. But I don't actually want the animation to speed up, so I'll select loop here. And I also want to keep this going throughout the video. So it will keep playing at normal speed now. So that's our second scene done. Again, we'll be coming back to this when we look at camera positioning and timings. And that's it for this lesson. We've learned how to add charts and GIFs to our scribe. And that's the end of this section of the course covering adding visual content. You can download this latest version of the scribe if you want to import it to look at all the settings we've covered. Hi, welcome to this lesson where we'll be learning about different layouts and how to control camera movement. So far we've added some audio and some visual content to our scribe. These are two key components of any great video. The next equally important component we're going to be looking at is how we can move the camera during the video in order to follow the content as it's revealed. But before we continue to work on our scribe here, I want to go through the basics of how to control camera movement. Earlier in the course I talked about some of the different layouts you can use for your scribe. So next I'm going to show you how you can set some of these up on your canvas, and also how you can control the movement of the camera around your scribe. So I've started by creating this scribe here, and I've chosen these images to help me tell my story about overcoming a challenge. And at the moment these are all arranged in a linear layout. So if I preview this, you'll see how the camera will automatically move to the right before drawing the next element. So this is the simplest layout, and it works pretty well for short, simple scribes. Remember that by default the video will zoom out at the end to show all the elements, like this. Again, this is fine if you only have a few elements, but having a long line like this doesn't look so great. The images are quite small, and we've got a lot of blank space above and below here. So one option would be to turn off the zoom at end feature here, and then the video is going to end on the last element, like this. Another option is to change your layout slightly. So instead of being in one line like this, we can arrange the elements into rows. So I'm going to select these elements here, using the Control or Command key to select them all. And I'm going to move them down here under the first set of elements. And then I'm going to do the same with these elements. So these now make a pattern that will fit the screen better when we zoom out at the end. So let's preview this again from here, and I'll turn the zoom at end back on again. So I think that looks better now. The next layout we talked about was collage, and in fact this is already starting to look a bit like a collage here. But instead of arranging the elements into rows, with a collage we can be more creative. So I'm still going to start with this first element here, and I want to end up with my final element here. But I can make the path a bit more interesting. Okay, so this gives you an idea. And if we preview this, it will now follow my new path around the canvas. But notice that it's still focusing on one element at a time. So it's not easy to see how the elements relate to each other until it zooms out at the end. So this is when we need to start to set specific camera positions for each element, rather than relying on the default. Remember, you can set a new camera position for each element. This means that for each element, you can choose how the camera should move, if at all. So let's start with our first element. To view its current camera position, we can either use this view camera icon here, or if you remember from earlier, we can also simply double click here. Okay, this is going to be drawn in the center here, and seeing as this is the first element, I think that's fine. But then instead of panning over here for the second element, maybe we want to keep the first element in view while this second element is being drawn. Maybe we want the camera to move from here to here. So we can set this as the camera position for the second element. And we do this by selecting the element and then clicking the set camera icon over here. So now this element will be drawn in this view. Let's have a look. Now we can still see the figure here while the second element is being drawn over here. Great. So next we want to think about where the camera should be for the third element. And in this case it could stay in the same position, so there's no camera movement. To do this we make sure we're still on the camera position for the previous element, because we might have moved while we were editing. So we go back to it like this, and then we set this same camera position for the third element. These two elements now have the same camera position. So the camera won't need to move at this point. Okay, so we've now finished this little area. Now we can think about where we go next. The next element is the checklist. So we'll need to pan up here. And we can decide where we want the camera to be for this element. As this is a collage, maybe we want to keep some of the previous elements still in view, so our audience can easily see how the picture is developing. So we can set this here. The next four elements here represent items from the checklist. So we can position the camera so that the checklist is in the middle, and we can then see each of these drawn around the edge, like this. So now we can select all of these elements and set this as the camera position for them. So now these four elements will all be drawn in this same camera position. So let's see what it looks like so far. So now, rather than a string of individual elements, we can more easily see how they're connected. The way you group your elements together in your scribe will relate back to your script and to the different sections you defined. Okay, so next we would continue to set the camera positions we want for each element or group of elements until we got to the end. So let's just preview that last part from here. So that's how you can set the camera for a collage style scribe. And you'd basically do the same sort of thing if you were using a mind map layout. Next I'm going to show you how you can set up a scene scribe. So in our collage we basically ended up with four groups of elements, and I'm going to make each one of these into a scene. So let's start by selecting these first three here, and I'm going to place them over here. This will be my first scene. Next we'll need these five, and we'll place them to the right of the first scene. Then we can move these to make the third scene, and finally these for the last scene. I've now placed these roughly where I want them to be, so let's start with the first scene. I need to zoom in here, and then I need to position these elements where I want them for my first scene. And then I select them all and set the same camera position for all of them. Notice that the zoom level here is 133%. I'm going to make sure that all the other scenes are at the same zoom level, which will make the camera pans smoother. Next I need to move to my second scene, so I can drag the canvas over like this in a straight line. And this time I want to make sure that all my first scene are out of view. So now I can reposition these elements to fit into my second scene here. And again, I can select them all and set the camera to this position. And then I need to do the same for my last two scenes. There. And as I haven't used the zoom, I'm still at 133% here. So let's see how this looks now. And for scenes, you usually want to turn off the zoom end. So there's the same story, but now it's in a scene style, which gives it a different feel. It's obviously up to you which layout you use for each of your own scribes. You can pick the one that fits your story best, or when you're feeling more confident, you can even combine the styles if you want to. That's the great thing about VideoScribe. You have an infinite canvas, and you have total freedom on how you lay out your content and how the camera will move during your video. Okay, that's it for this lesson. We've learned how to use different layouts and how to control the camera movement. In the next lesson, we'll be setting the camera positions for our scribe. Hi, welcome to this lesson where we'll be learning how to create scenes for our scribe. So let's get back to our project. We've already started to lay out our elements here. And for this scribe, we'll be creating a series of scenes which combine to form an overall collage. So we've already positioned each of these elements where we want them in order to build our first scene. But let's preview here to see what this looks like right now. And by the way, I've muted the scribe audio for now. So just like we saw in the previous lesson, the camera will automatically move to each element and draw it in the middle of the screen. But for this scribe, I want to fix the camera here, while each of the elements in this scene is drawn. So just like in the previous lesson, first we want to make sure we're at the zoom level we want. So we started at 100%, so that's where we want to be. And we want to make sure that everything is framed nicely in our current view. Next we can select all the elements that we want to be drawn in this particular view. So for us, that's all the images in this scene here. We can do this using the Control or Command keys again and selecting all the elements either on the canvas or on the timeline. We can also select all the elements in a group quickly by selecting the first one and using the Shift key and clicking on the last element in the group in the timeline. This will select all the elements in between. Okay, so now we've got all of them selected, we can click on this icon over here to set the camera for all these elements to this current view. So now when we preview this time, we can see that the camera stays static in the position we selected while each of these elements is being drawn. So this is just like the scenes example from the previous lesson. This camera position has now been saved for each of these elements. So it doesn't matter if we now move around the canvas again while we're editing. Whenever we play this part of the scribe, it will remember exactly where the camera needs to be. You see, it's automatically jumped back to this position here. And also, don't forget that you can come back to this position whenever you want to, using this icon here on the element in the timeline, or by double clicking here. So if we were over here and we wanted to get back, we just double click on one of the elements from the first scene and it takes us to the camera position. Okay, so next we need to set the camera for our second scene, which is over here. So again, we make sure we're happy with the canvas zoom and the position for this scene. And then we select all the elements we want to be drawn in this view and click Set Camera. Notice I avoided this element here, as this needs to be drawn as part of the first scene. So I don't want to change the camera position we've already set. And we can now quickly move between the different parts of our scribe by double clicking on the different elements in the timeline. Okay, so that's it for this lesson. We've learnt how to set the camera for the scenes in our scribe. And that's it for this section of the course, covering controlling camera movement. You can download the scribe files for the various projects we've looked at in this section. Hi, welcome to this lesson where we'll be learning how to use the move-in and fade-in animation methods. So this is the first scene of our project, and so far all the elements are using the default draw animation. So let's take a look at some of the other animations we can use. And here we can see the different options we have. Let's select move-in for this image. This animation will mean that instead of being drawn, the image is moved onto the canvas using a hand. So let's save this and preview how it looks. The first thing that you probably noticed was that it was still using the same default hand for this move-in animation. So we'll need to change the hand for this specific element. To do this, we go back into the properties for this element, and then we can select a different hand, which will overwrite the default for this element. Remember that I suggested you stick with hands from the same set, so if we go back in here, we can select one of these open move-in hands. So now this looks like this. Using move-in is a great alternative to drawing your images. It works really well for images that can't be drawn easily, like complex diagrams or photographs, or it can be part of a particular theme. So for example, this scrapbook template uses move-in to place images and photos into a scrapbook. So let's look at the options for move-in. We can see these here. Over here we can select the direction for the move-in, so we can decide which edge or corner the element will move in from. And if we click on this line in the middle, we can choose whether it should move along a straight path or a curve. Next you can select the move-in effect. By default this is set to smooth. This means it will slow down towards the end of the animation, which gives it a natural feel. We can also select overshoot, where it goes too far and then comes back to its final position, or bounce, which means the element will bounce into position. And the last option here is uniform. So this is if you need the move-in to occur at a uniform speed, without that slowing down I mentioned. Okay, so far we've been looking at elements being moved in using a hand, but one alternative that works very well with move-in is using the no-hand option. This means the elements will move in by themselves. And we can use this to create some interesting effects. So for example, if we select no hand for the runner now, and have him move in from the left here, this gives the effect of him running onto the canvas. And we can use this effect to make other images move, for example a vehicle or an animal. Or we could use this to create an exciting theme. This is how our scribe would look if we used move-ins with the bounce effect and no hand. So here we're moving away from the classic hand-drawn look, but these options do give you some great alternatives to use for some of your videos. Okay, next I want to look at fade-in, and I'm going to use this on these two images we have here. So for this effect, we simply need to select the fade-in option here. We don't need to select any options, and this animation doesn't use a hand. The only thing we need to think about is the animate time, and as a rule, fade-ins need to be quite quick compared to the draw animations. So I'll set these to 1 second each. It's worth mentioning here that you can set the animation time to 0. This will mean that the element appears instantly. Okay, let's preview these, and I'll show you a useful shortcut. To preview your scribe from a particular point in the timeline, you can select the element, and then instead of going up here to use this icon, you can simply right-click on the timeline and select play from here. I use this all the time. Okay, that's it for this lesson. We've learnt how we can use the move-in and fade-in animations. In the next lesson, we'll be looking at how you can morph images. Hi, welcome to this lesson where we'll be learning how to use the morph tool to transform images. So far we've looked at the draw, move-in and fade-in animations. Next we're going to take a look at morph. And for our scribe here, we're going to be using morph in our third scene. So let's quickly set this up. So here's our first scene, and this is our second scene. So for our third scene, we're going to move over here and keep the water cooler in view here, and we'll zoom in a little. This scene is going to be all about a healthy diet. So first we can add some text, and we can use the same font we used earlier. And let's make it bold. So let's position this at the top here. And seeing as this is the first new element in this scene, I want to save this new view as the camera position. Next, I want to add some healthy food options. Okay, so maybe a donut isn't so healthy, So this is where we're going to use the morph. What we're going to do is transform the donut into the yogurt. First, I'm going to set the camera for all these new elements, and I'm going to make sure they're all using the same view as the text here. Okay, so at the moment each of these images will be drawn, and we do still want the donut to be drawn, so we'll leave this. So let's go into the properties for the yogurt, and we'll need to select the morph animation option here. Now it's asking us where we want to morph from. These are all the images from before this point in the timeline, so we can select the donut. And notice that by default this box is checked. That means it's going to remove the donut image, which is what we want. So let's preview this from here now. So you can see it takes all the lines from the donut and morphs them across to form the yogurt image. And we can place the images on top of each other so that the morphing occurs in the same spot. And we can speed these up a bit. So that brings us to the end of this lesson. We've learnt how to use morph to transform one image into another. In the next lesson, I'll be showing you how you can create an erase effect. Hi, welcome to this lesson where we'll be learning how to adjust the various timings for each of the elements in your scribe. So far we've added some audio and some visual content to our scribe and controlled how the camera moves around the canvas to reveal this content. The next very important aspect of your video is timing. The timing and pace of your video are critical and can really affect how captivating and engaging they are, and therefore how effective they are. And it's a real balancing act. You don't want everything happening so quickly that your audience can't keep up, but you also don't want them to be bored watching slow animations with long pauses. It's also really important for the audio to be in sync with the visual content, so images appear at the right time to reinforce the narration, and transitions occur as new topics are being introduced. Okay, so here we can see we have our first scene where we left it at the end of the last lesson. So in this lesson I want to take you through the different timing settings we have. So let's go into the properties for our bridge image here to see these. Every element has these three timing settings here, which we already looked at earlier in the course. So just to recap, the first is the animation time, which we sometimes call the draw time. This is how long the animation for this element will last. So in this case the animation method is set to draw here. So this is the time it will take to draw this element. You can adjust this to make it take more or less time to draw the element, which means it will automatically draw the element slower or quicker to fit this time. If we change the animation method to say move in, then this will be the time it takes to move in, or fade in, or morph. And as I mentioned earlier, some of these animations often need less time to complete compared to the draw animation. You'll want to set the timings for your animations so they fit your voiceover. So for example, my script starts with set yourself off in the right direction, so I'll want this image to be animating at that point. Notice how the plus and minus icons change the time in half-second steps. This is a small enough step for most situations, but if you need to, you can click on the time and now you can type in a number to 0.1 of a second. Okay, so next is the pause time. This is how long the video will pause after finishing the animation. The default is half a second, which is often about right. We don't want the pause to be too long, as we want to keep our audience interested. If you find you need to add a long pause to fit with your audio, then maybe think about adding an extra element at this point. And next we have the transition time. This is how long the camera will take to move from its current position for this element across to the camera position for the next element. This is set to 1 second, which again is about right for most transitions. However, in our case here, we've set a fixed camera position for the whole of this scene, so there aren't going to be any transitions until we get to the last element in this scene. So we can actually remove this. If we were to leave this in here, then it would effectively become an extra pause time. Next down here we can see the total time for this element and its start and end time here. These can be very useful when you're trying to sync this element with a particular point in your voiceover. Okay, that's it for this lesson. We've learnt how to adjust the timings for our scribe. In the next lesson, we'll be looking at how we can synchronize the visuals with our voiceover. Hi, welcome to this lesson where we'll be learning how to adjust the various timings of your elements to synchronize your visuals with your voiceover. So let's start by working on the timings for this first scene here. First, let's preview to see how it looks so far and listen to the voiceover. Set yourself off in the right direction. Here's a quick guide to staying healthy to help you look after your body and your mind. Eating a healthy, balanced diet is an important part of maintaining good health. Okay, so straight away we can see that the visuals are moving too slowly and they're lagging behind the voiceover. So we're going to need to reduce the timings on a lot of these elements. In our case, there are a couple of key points in the voiceover that we're going to want to synchronize with particular visuals. The first is when I say, here's a quick guide to staying healthy. We'll want this to come at the same point that this text is being drawn here. And then when I say, look after your body and mind, we'll want to match body with this image and mind with this one. So with that in mind, let's preview this again and see where we can save some time. Set yourself off in the right direction. Here's a quick guide to staying healthy to help you look after your body and your mind. Okay, those first two images are being animated quite slowly. I want this video to be quite fast and pacey, so let's speed these up. Just as a reminder, this element here is the background image we added, and if I unlock this, we can see that we've already set each of the timings for this element to 0, which means this will already be there from the first frame of the video. So let's just lock this one again. Next, we're going to reduce the animate time for the runner and the bridge to 1 second each. I'm going to leave the pause here after it draws the bridge image, but I'm going to reduce the pause time on the runner to 0. I'm also going to reduce the transition time here down to 0. Remember, I've already done this for the bridge. So let's try this out. Set yourself off in the right direction. Here's a quick guide to staying healthy to help. Okay, so that's better. Let's preview that again, and this time I'm going to pause it when we get to the part of the voiceover which says, here's a quick guide to staying healthy. Set yourself off in the right direction. Here's a quick... Okay, so down here we can see that this comes at about 3.5 seconds in. So we know that this is when we want the text to be drawn. This is one way we can work out how we need to adjust our timings to fit with our voiceover. So let's look at the text element. We can see it currently starts at 7 seconds in. So we know we're going to need to shave off about 3.5 seconds to get us to the right place. So let's go back to the speech bubble. We're looking to reduce these timings so that this element ends at 3.5 seconds, which is when we want the text to start. We can remove the transition time again, but we're also going to need to reduce the animate time right down to ½ second, which is quite quick for a draw animation. So I'm also going to change this to fade in. Remember, I said that fade-ins usually need to be quicker anyway, so these can be useful when we need to speed up the animations. So now we can see that this element will be finished at 3.5 seconds, just like we want. So let's just check that. Set yourself off in the right direction. Here's a quick guide to staying healthy to help you look after your body and your mind. Eating a healthy... Okay, so the first part looks okay now, and the text starts at the right time, but the text is still being drawn too slowly. So let's speed this up so it's drawn in 2 seconds. And again, we can remove the transition time. I'll leave the pause at ½ second, as like I said, this is usually about right for most scribes. We know that the first part of the scene is okay now, so let's preview from this text element. Guide to staying healthy to help you look after your body and your mind. So we saw the body image came in at the right time now, but the mind one was still coming in late. So let's try removing the transition time on the body image. Body and your mind. Eating a healthy... Okay, it's still a bit late, so we have to either reduce the animate time or the pause time. I'm going to remove the pause. Body and your mind. Okay, that's pretty good. If I was being a perfectionist, I'd just reduce the animate time to 0.8. And we can do the same for the mind image to match this. body and your mind. There, so that's this first scene done. Next we'll need to look at the transition to the next scene. So that's controlled by the transition time here on the mind image, as this is the last element in this scene. This is going to dictate how quickly the camera moves up to the new scene. So let's leave this at 1 second. If you remember, when I recorded the voiceover, I paused for about a second between each of the scenes in the script. So this was to allow for this transition time here. It really helps to break up the scribe if the pause in the voiceover happens at the same time as the camera transition. So let's see how this looks. Body and your mind. Eating a healthy, balanced diet. Okay, that's pretty good. So that's the basic process. We can work our way through the scribe, making adjustments for the timings as we go, so that the animations and transitions match up with our voiceover. Let's take a look at this next scene. A healthy, balanced diet is an important part of maintaining good health. Try to eat at least 5 varied portions of fruit and veg a day. Drink plenty of fluids, at least 6 to 8 glasses. So for this scene, we need to slow down the drawing of the pie chart and the water cooler, and increase the pauses a little to make it fit. There. So let's try this out. A healthy, balanced diet is an important part of maintaining good health. Try to eat at least 5 varied portions of fruit and veg a day. Drink plenty of fluids. Okay, that's pretty good. So now we've got it so the water cooler comes on when we start talking about water. And then for the third scene, we don't actually have a lot of time to draw all of these food elements. So in this case, what we can do is take the animation time down to 0 so they appear instantly, with a short pause in between. So here's how the first 3 scenes look now. Set yourself off in the right direction. Here's a quick guide to staying healthy to help you look after your body and your mind. Eating a healthy, balanced diet is an important part of maintaining good health. Try to eat at least 5 varied portions of fruit and veg a day. Drink plenty of fluids, at least 6 to 8 glasses a day, and read food labels to avoid too much saturated fat, sugar and salt. There. So that's it for this lesson. We've learned how to synchronize the visuals of our scribe with our voiceover. And that's the end of this section on adjusting our scribe timings. You can download the latest version of the example scribe to see all the changes we've made. Hi, welcome to this lesson where we'll be learning how to finalize our scribe ready for publishing. So we've now covered each of the key components required to build an amazing scribe. Adding your audio, music and voiceover, adding your visual components, images, text, charts and GIFs, setting your camera position and creating transitions, choosing your animation methods, and adjusting the scribe timings. For the purposes of the course, these were introduced one by one, but in reality it makes sense to consider all of these together as you build your scribe. So as we did for this project, I would usually add the music and voiceover at the start, and then for each new scene or section of the project I would begin by adding each of the elements and positioning them. Next I would set the camera for these elements. I would then choose the animation methods I wanted, and then I'd adjust the timings for each of the scenes. And I'd basically follow this same process for each of the sections as I created it. So to add the next scene to our scribe here, we can first jump to the end of our previous scene, which is here, and then we can pan across to this blank area here, making sure we don't have any of the images from the previous scene in view. This next scene is going to cover mental well-being, so let's search for a suitable image to represent this, and we can search for mind. And here we can use this image. And we can set the camera for this new element to this screen view. And we can place it like this. Notice that it's put this new image at the end of the timeline. So we need to move this to this position ahead of these 2 elements, which we want to be at the very end. Okay, so now we want to add another number up here. And like before, I'll copy the one I've already got to make sure it looks the same. So let's use Fit All to zoom out. And we can then copy this number here. If we were to paste it now, it would appear here next to the selected element, and then we'd have to move it. So to save time, we can select the appropriate point in the timeline where we want this to appear, which is just after the yogurt image here. So here it is in the correct place on the timeline. But remember, we still need to move it on the canvas. At the moment, it's exactly on top of the original one here. Another great tip, which I use all the time, is to use the arrow keys to move elements on the canvas. This can be really handy sometimes. Okay, so now we go back to the camera position for this new scene. Remember, we've already set it for this element here. And we can also set this for the number element as well. And now we can edit the text. And place it where we want it. So next we need to continue to add the rest of the elements for this section, setting the camera and the animations as we go. And once this is done, we can go through these new elements and adjust the timings, just like we were doing in the previous lesson. So now we can preview this section. Your mental well-being is just as important as your physical health. Stay connected with other people and make plans. Keep yourself physically active and learn new skills. Be kind to others and be mindful of the present moment. And we can then keep using this same approach to add each of the remaining sections. And then right at the end, we're going to return to this first scene where the speech text is going to be erased and then redrawn. Then we can have a slightly longer pause on the last element, and then this final transition time here will be used for the zoom out at the end. So let's make this quite slow. I also want to make sure that everything is framed nicely when we do zoom out at the end. This fit all option actually zooms to exactly the same place as the zoom at end. And I'm also going to adjust the size of our background image here so that it fits our final image nicely. Okay, so that's all done. Let's save this now. So we've now created a complete scribe. We've set the animations and the camera positions for each of the scenes, and we've adjusted the timings. Now, as a final step, it's a really good idea to watch the whole thing through a couple of times to check we didn't miss anything. And here's a checklist of things for you to look out for. Watch it carefully with a critical eye. Imagine you're the target audience and think how it will come across to them. The first time through, it's a good idea to focus on the timings. Is the pace right? Watch out for parts that appear rushed or too slow. Do the timings of the visuals match the audio well? And do the transitions line up with the introduction of each new section? It should be very easy to follow the narrative without getting distracted. Next, watch it again, and this time concentrate on the visuals. Are all the elements positioned well? Watch out for elements showing when they shouldn't, either at the edge of a scene or during a transition. And check the camera doesn't shift position when it shouldn't. This is usually because one or more of the elements has a slightly different camera setting than the rest. Okay, so I've watched rscribe through a couple of times now, and I've made a few small adjustments to the element positions, just to neaten things up. I've also swapped the order of the runner and the bridge scene here, as I thought it worked better. It's things like this you only think of if you step back and try to watch it with fresh eyes. You can also ask other people to review it for you. So let's see what this final version looks like now. Set yourself off in the right direction. Here's a quick guide to staying healthy to help you look after your body and your mind. Eating a healthy, balanced diet is an important part of maintaining good health. Try to eat at least 5 varied portions of fruit and veg a day. Drink plenty of fluids, at least 6 to 8 glasses a day, and read food labels to avoid too much saturated fat, sugar and salt. Your mental well-being is just as important as your physical health. Stay connected with other people and make plans. Keep yourself physically active and learn new skills. Be kind to others and be mindful of the present moment. In this busy society, sleep is often undervalued, but sleep is so vital to good health. Make it a priority to get a good 8 hours each night. Do some form of exercise every day. Any type of physical activity is good for you. Aim for 30 minutes a day and try to make it something you enjoy. Anything that raises your heart rate and makes you breathe faster and feel warmer. Start taking positive steps to look after your physical health and your mental well-being. There, so that's the final scribe. Okay, that's it for this lesson. We've learnt how to finalise and check our scribe. In the next lesson we'll be looking at how we can turn our scribe into a video and share it. Hi, welcome to this lesson where we'll be learning how to turn our scribe into a video and share it. Okay, so in the last lesson we finished building our scribe and we previewed it to check everything looked okay. Now it's time to turn our scribe into a video, so let's look at the options we have. This screen gives us several ways we can publish and share our video. Notice we can also remove the zoom at end feature here as well, but in our case we want to use this. Also we can add a logo watermark here. This needs to be a PNG image, maximum 1200 by 1200 pixels. And we can see that this has been added to the corner of our scribe here. And it'll stay in the corner throughout our video. And we can remove it here. Next, let's look at these options here, which allow us to create a video file locally. We can select the format of the video here. So WMV, MOV or AVI. We can also convert the scribe into a PNG or JPEG image sequence here, which is useful if you want to import your video into something like Adobe Premiere or After Effects. Next we can select the size of the video. For your final video you'll probably want to select 1080 HD, but it's often a good idea to create a draft version which you can review and share to get feedback. So this could be lower quality. We can also set the frame rate here, although 30 frames per second is usually fine. The video will usually have the same name as the scribe, but we can change this here. And we can choose the location where the video file will be created here. So if we click here now, it will start to render our scribe as a video. This will now create a local video file, in this case a MOV file, which we can then upload to YouTube or our website or wherever we're going to use it. This can take several minutes, so I'm going to stop this for now. Okay, next over here we have an option to create a PowerPoint presentation. This will again render the scribe as a video, and it will automatically add it as a video slide in a new presentation. You can then copy and paste this slide into your own presentation deck. We can also send the video directly to Vimeo. So here we can add a description and select who can see it, and if we want to be able to embed this video on another site. And if we click this now, it will ask us to log into our Vimeo account, and then it will render the video and upload it to our account. And the next option here is to submit your scribe to Shoko, which is our online video sharing platform. The advantage of this option is that it will upload the scribe file, and then it'll be turned into a video using our online cloud rendering service. So this frees up your machine. So here we can select the privacy setting for the video and then click here. And you can see that it can upload your scribe really quickly. This is now being processed by our cloud service and we'll receive an email when it's ready. And here we can see we have a link we can use to share this video, and also an embed code we can use to embed this video on a website. So let's click this link here to go to the Showco site. At the moment this video is still being processed, so let's look at my other videos. You'll need to make sure you're logged in using the same account you use for VideoScribe. So this page shows you all the videos you've submitted. Let's take a look at this one. So at the top here you can view the video, and then down here we can see some stats like the number of likes and views. Here we can see the share options, including the share link here and the embed code here. We can change the visibility settings here or delete it. And here we can download the video as an MP4 in different sizes, so this is really useful. Okay, so that's it for this lesson. We've learned how to create a video and various ways we can share it. That's also the end of this section of the course covering finalising and sharing your video. You can download the final version of the example scribe to see all the changes we've made.